So one day I bought like 1,000,000 Orbeez to dump in this inflatable pool and get in. Because I've always seen people do this kind of stuff and always wanted to try it. So here it goes. I dumped all the Orbeez out into this pool, mixed it up, and here's an hour time lapse of it growing. And this is what they looked like at the end of the hour. Yeah, they still needed to get bigger, so I came back the next day and it was completely full. Look at it. I got in the pool and the Orbeez got huge. Look at this one. Then I decided to lay down in it, move around. I moved my legs around like this, made a bunch of waves, splashed my face with Orbeez, and jumped in them. Then I dropped this rubber band ball in them and it made a pretty big splash. Here's the slow-mo and here's another drop. Like if I should fill this pool up to the top. One day I took an air mattress and a bunch of cardboard and decided to make a cardboard air mattress type boat. And my goal was to make it to where you couldn't see any of the air mattress, so it just looked like a complete cardboard boat. I got it completely finished and it looked pretty cool. I took it out to the lake, then I jumped on and paddled my way out. And it was working. I was smooth sailing, then I got blown into the trees, but eventually pushed my way out and made my way around the dock thinking I was going to dock it, but ended up just going all the way around and then headed for these rocks, where I parked the boat for a little while, got off, and then kept going. And I went all the way around this little peninsula and went to shore. Let me know what else I should make. So one day while scootering, I dropped my laptop and then dropped it again on accident, totally on accident. And I had to fix it, so I looked up on the internet and got some toothpaste and some lemons to repair the crack. I've dumped the toothpaste out, started brushing it really hard, and I brushed it for quite a while and realized it wasn't going to do anything. Yeah, so then I tried to fix this plate and bam, it was bigger and better, and then I broke it. But then I tried the lemon juice on the laptop and that didn't really work either. So then I just got sad. So one day I got a comment that said to turn my brother's truck bed into a pool and swim in it. And I've already done this for YouTube, but not really for TikTok, so here you go. I filled the pool up with water and then got in it, sat down, and we took off. And it was pretty cool at first. I put my head underwater and that was cool. I came up and then just chilled and enjoyed the ride. It was all pretty chill for the most part, and then we went kind of fast, and I also splashed out some water. Then we went back home and I got out. What else should I do? So one day, someone on my Instagram gave me the idea to build a trampoline out of my giant rubber bands that I use for my giant rubber band ball. And my first attempt was pretty bad. I couldn't figure out the tightness it needed, but eventually I got it, and then I took a big strand and wrapped them all the way around this thing like this. But it wasn't tight enough, so I made this X thing, and it was even more bouncy, and it was time to test it out. I made a cool hammock, I could step over it and throw shovels on it. And this tire, and this rubber band ball, just kidding. I tried to surf on it, and then went to Walmart to get a watermelon, soda, and some plates to throw on it. And the watermelon ended up being too heavy to bounce on it, so I moved on to the root beer, and it wouldn't explode, so I took it outside to do it. It launched pretty decently, and then I threw the plate, and it didn't break at first, but the second throw it shattered. So I threw it again, broke some bands, and then I just kind of went ham on some stuff. So one day I decided to make a giant paper airplane out of this board stuff. And my first design was just a basic airplane that had a problem of the nose going up. Except for this one flight that did really good for some reason. But I looked up on the internet and there were some ways to fix this with this type of design that kind of helped. But I ended up making a whole nother plane with a slightly different design, taking them to this cliffside. I first tested the planes off this little hill and they did pretty decent. And then I threw them off the cliff. And the first one just kind of went and then nosedived. And the second one went up, and then also nosedived. And I took them back up and tried again, and the first one was doing really good until it flew in the tree, and the second one was doing really good until the wind picked up a lot and made it nosedive. The planes eventually fell out of the tree, and I had a few more good flights, including this one. So I think I'm just going to wait for a less windy day and try again. So one day I filled this inflatable pool up with oobleck, liquid solid. When you hit it, it's a solid, and when you move slowly in it, it's a liquid. We spent a long time, like 2 hours, mixing it all up until we had it full. And it was working. I stepped in it slowly and sank and then ran on it, and I was alright. I also tried hitting it with an axe and almost got it stuck. Yeah, don't try this at home. This stuff is crazy though. I got in and got stuck, so I just buried myself in it and then put some on my head. Then I got out and tried to walk on my hands. And it worked for a little bit. Then I put some on my face, and when I slapped myself, it didn't even hurt. Then I laid down, got out quickly. My friend jumped across it, and then I hit it with a tennis racket in slow-mo. And then washed off. Comment any other ideas. So one day I went to Walmart and got a bunch of cardboard to make one of those cardboard tunnel slides on my stairs like I've seen before. And tape. And then left. Went home and started building it. I taped the first box down at the top and was adding glow sticks all along on the way down. I then taped the second box to the top one and repeated this process for a long time until eventually I was done. The slide was looking pretty cool. I threw some pillows down to break my fall and went down it. And the first one was kind of anticlimactic, but my brother went down pretty fast and almost hurt himself. And on his next go, he basically destroyed the slide. So I had to remove this piece and put down a new flooring that made it actually faster. Here's a POV of me sliding down. And here's my final go. So one day I decided to take this hamster ball across the country into the ocean, but first in this pool, and then around the warehouse and out to the road. where I took off and made it to a trail. I kept going, found this hill, traveled up it, and made it to a golf course. Then I left the golf course and ran off to the ocean. And for some reason I thought I'd make it out to sea, but the waves just kept pushing me back and knocking me down. Look at that fall. And this wave really got me right here. And it pushed me all the way back to shore. So one day I decided to build like a Nerf sniper tower up in this loft, make a cool little cardboard fort, because why not? And after I was done with that, I decided to build one on the ground level that actually looked even better. And I spent a lot of time on it, made this cardboard fort, added a tower until it looked like that, and it was across from this one. Then it was time for war. We loaded our guns, and then we were ready to face off. I had the tower with the Fortnite sniper, and I kept shooting and shooting. But I didn't end up having the best luck. And even fell, but check out that cool merch. So one day I saw this video on TikTok of this guy jumping up and down in this pool and making all these waves and then collapsing like this. So I wanted to test it out and see if it would work with me. So I drug a pool out and filled it up. So then I took out a floaty, aired it all the way up, and got in and tried to repeat exactly what the guy did, jumping up and down, but I didn't see much progress. And there was no waves that made me crash, so then I just made this little whirlpool. After that, I tried again to do the splash thing, didn't work, so I swam around, did a little flip, and then got in the hamster ball. I flipped around in that and then tried the wave thing with it. And it wasn't working very well, so I just did another flip and then tried the wave thing again. And even again, but they all failed, so comment any other ideas you have. So one day someone commented and told me to make a boat out of plastic containers, so I made one out of these plastic bottles. I taped this seat on like this, and it was ready to float down the creek. I got on and I took off, and it was kind of hard to balance, and then I fell. But I got back up and continued on down the creek. The boat was kind of unstable, but I continued on as far as I could go. And when I made it to the big current, I was unbalanced and fell off. And then I lost track of the boat. It was floating down the creek, so I chased after it and hopped on. And then fell again. And also chased the oar down and finally headed back. Comment what else I should make a boat out of. So one day I got a bunch of bubble wrap and ramen noodles to make 2 separate boats for my Will It Boat series. I started with the bubble wrap and taped these 3 things together with a little bit of cardboard and went off on the creek. It was hard to balance on, but it floated at first. And I floated for a while until eventually water started to seep in and I had to get off and drag it to shore. Then I threw a rock and the next day got started on this ramen noodle boat. And the plan was to keep all the ramen in the boxes because I didn't want any of the noodles to get in the water. But I finished the boat and took it out to the creek and it floated pretty decently, but when I got on it, it started to sink. And it stayed afloat, but not with me. Maybe a squirrel. So one day I filled an even bigger pool up with Orbeez. I filled the other one up with about 2 million Orbeez, and I'm going to fill this one up with millions more. And we were going to reuse the old Orbeez in this pool too, but they kind of smelled bad, so we just went with all new, and it looked like this. It was pretty insane looking and really colorful. There's millions and millions of colorful little orbs. I got in it and then splashed around, then jumped in and tried to swim across, then jumped off this mini trampoline. And I even put this inflatable zebra in there and tried to make it look like I was in a weird rap video. And fell in, like if I should add even more Orbeez. So one day after filling a pool up with like 1 million Orbeez, people kept telling me to add more, so I'm adding double. Here are all the Orbeez sitting in the water, and then the next day it looked like this. It was crazy. I fell in it, and it was one of the coolest things I've ever experienced. It was like just a really weird pool. Here I am buried in it, then jumping in it, then falling in it, then doing a flip into it, dropping this rubber band ball. Here it is again, and then moving a bunch of the Orbeez into this hamster ball to try it in that. And the problem was it was just too heavy and really hard to move. So one day I decided to see if I could make foam board into a boat that would float me down the creek. This is going to be my first part to a series where I test if random objects or materials will make a boat. I had the boat made and then I took it down to the creek, put it in the water and got in. And at first I didn't think it was going very well. Then I put a hole in it and had to move it to deeper water. So then I tested it again and completely ruined the boat. Look at it. So then I ran off sad, but comment any other boat ideas you want me to make. So one day I decided to fill this giant hamster ball up with water and swim in it. And this one's a lot bigger than my last one, so it'd be easier to fill with water. And I stopped it at this level so I could still be able to get in and swim in it. And then I jumped in, and it was pretty cool inside. I went underwater, and here I am. And then I came back up and put some goggles on and went back underwater again. And it was really cold, so I got out for a sec, got in the hot tub, and then got back in with a floaty. And then spun around. And then I decided to turn it into a giant batch of Kool-Aid. Full videos on my YouTube, Dylan Ayres. So one day I wanted to turn my brother's truck into a pool to drive down the road in. So I went to Walmart to get a blow-up pool to put in the truck bed. I got one, and then I also got a pool noodle. After that, we saw a pool that was actually designed for trucks, so we got that instead. And we got a donut and a water gun, and then we left. I walked out, went home, and then placed it in my brother's truck. Then I got my air pump and started airing it up. And after that was done, I got the hose and started filling it all up with water. It took quite a while, and while we filled it up, we simultaneously added hot tub water to make it less cold. Then I took the hose out, added one last bucket of hot tub water, and I was done. And I was just chilling on the floaty, and now my brother's going to drive down the road. Full vid will be on my YouTube at Dylan Ayres. So one day someone commented for me to use hot glue sticks to try to get the dents out like 5-minute crafts. And I'm going to try because I put quite a lot of dents in this car with my rubber band ball. I went to Walmart, got some hot glue sticks, and then went home to fix these dents. The little lighter wasn't big enough, so I got out this blowtorch, stuck it on, and it pulled the metal but didn't work. So I tried again and still failed. Yeah. So I got out the longer sticks with more fire, don't try this at home, and failed again. And then I tried to make a smaller dent with a bat, thinking the dents were too big, but that wasn't the case.
This is indeed cap.
So one day I decided to fix some of the damage on this car with life hacks I saw on the internet, starting with toothpaste to fix these scratches, which didn't end up working. So then we just moved on to the wheels using this black tire shine, and then tried to repair this crack on the windshield, and the shaving cream or toothpaste didn't really work. So then I just washed the entire car and really tried to actually detail it. I used this Dollar General leather cleaner on the cloth seats, and it looked really great. And then vacuumed the entire thing, and used this plunger to get the dents out, but it actually got this dent out of the roof. So one day someone commented telling me I should make the plane even bigger, so I put two boards together and made the plane even bigger. Here's the new one. But it still had a problem. The tip was raising up, so we added some weight on the tip and it flew pretty good. Here it is flying into a tree. But I wanted to get it up on this roof to throw into wide open spaces, so I threw it up and then tried to figure out how to get up. And then I found this thing and used it as a ladder. I was up and here was the first throw. It was kind of bad, but the next flight was actually pretty good. But I still wanted a perfect flight, so I threw it again, and this one looked like it was going to be perfect until it raised up a little bit and then did a flip. And then I threw it again, and this looked like the best flight yet. It was just sailing until it hit a tree. I also tested this store-bought plane, which flew pretty good, and then gave this one last throw into the field. And I'd say this plane was a success. So one day I bought a ton of cardboard sheets at Walmart to build the biggest cardboard boat I could make while still functioning. And I used to make cardboard boats all the time, but I hadn't made one in a while and I felt like making a huge one. I pieced the boat together, taped it up completely, taped all the flaps down, flipped it over, taped this, and then put a bunch of sheets in the bottom. And after that was taped completely, we flipped it back over and then added another sheet, taped that down fully, and then I decided to add some Flex Seal. I did this to help waterproof the boat, and then I sprayed this on there. But I ended up coming back the next day and adding another coat anyway because it felt flimsy still. After that was done drying, it was time to test it out at the creek. I put it in the water, got in, and laid down. That was the only way I could be stable. The current wasn't very strong, so I tried to row without much luck, and then I saw a leak, and the boat started to collapse in. I kept on pushing, trying to stay afloat, but with no luck, we eventually went down, and I was never seen again. Not really, but I was pretty sad. So the other day I made this giant rubber band trampoline and people wanted me to make it even bigger and add a lot more bands. So I spent another hour or so adding even more bands until it looked like it was about to bend in. It could support my weight, but I wanted to test its bounciness first with this can that eventually exploded. And next with this basketball that didn't bounce super high, so I got out this watermelon and it just went right through it. So I got out this tire that completely broke the entire trampoline and bent the metal clear like in half almost. As you can see right here, so I just threw it in the pool. So one day someone commented saying I should throw these giant Orbeez at cars in the street. And I'm going to do that, but first I wanted to test some other stuff out. Throwing against the wall, dropping one, throwing one at my friend, tossing one in this pool of Orbeez and comparing them, lighting them on fire, which didn't do much. So then I tried putting them in the microwave, which didn't do much until we put it in for over 30 seconds and they all started popping. And were really hot to touch. Then I tried crushing them with this ball, look at the slow-mo, and then it was time to throw them at this car, which I think they got mad. So I just ran. So one day I ordered this stuff called Great Stuff, which is basically expandable foam insulation. And my goal was to build a boat out of it. Not just any boat, a cardboard boat, because a while back I had a series on TikTok where I tried to make cardboard boats float, and I was never very successful. But I used the best cardboard boat design I knew how to make, and then I was going to cover the entire outside in the Great Stuff. And hopefully it'll float. So I finished taping up the entire bottom, like this. And I already had a decent looking boat. Then we covered the entire bottom in the Great Stuff. And then later we covered the rest of the sides. And when I came back the next day, it was solid looking. And it was ready to be tested in the creek. I walked it down and then got in. And I started to float away. It was working flawlessly without any problem. So I just kept on rowing and having a good time. And then I about ran into a tree. And then I started heading out further. And it was the best boat I'd ever made. I just kept going. So one day I decided to make a life jacket out of Great Stuff and a pair of slides. I started with the life jacket, then outlined a pair of my slides and filled that out. I messed with the slides a little bit off camera to make them look like this, but the next day they were pretty good. I could walk in them, jump, and even run. I also threw them in this tiny pool and they floated. And then I got out the life jacket and tried to run the pool thinking I would run on water, but I didn't. And then I took the life jacket to the creek to test it. And when I fell in, the Great Stuff life jacket perfectly saved me. And it worked amazingly. Still do not attempt this. So one day someone commented that I need to put more coats of Flex Seal on the egg. So I Flex Sealed another egg and then put another coat on the other side. And after that, I let it dry, then put another coat on. And then put another coat on. And then put one last coat on. And it was done and seemed pretty sturdy, so I tested it from a waist-high drop, and it held up pretty well. So I went a little higher, and it seemed a little bit mushed in. So I threw it up in the air, and then it was like completely mushed in. So I just threw it up one more time for the heck of it, and it was crushed. So one day I went back to Walmart to retry my failed cardboard boat. I got Gorilla Tape, some duct tape, some cardboard, and bubble wrap. And then I headed home. I also ended up getting this cart because it was fun. I got home and started building my new design. It was going to be a lot more boxy this time, and my plan was to put 2 boxes together. I used Gorilla Tape to tape the seams of the boxes, and then I put them together. And then I flipped it over to tape the bottom. And after that, I cut out the middle piece that was inside the box. And then I covered the whole bottom of the boat in duct tape, and ended up using the whole roll. And then I covered it in bubble wrap, so it would like float, I guess. And it was done. I'm running out of time, so part 2 tomorrow. So one day someone commented on my video with this giant dome thing and told me to put ball pit balls in it, so I put the whole ball pit in it. And it took a pretty long time having to air it up and move all the balls in, and then I had to move them from this thing to this thing until eventually they were all in the one big circle. And it looked really cool. I fell in it, then looked around, and then ran around, and then fell again, threw some balls at the camera, tried to run, and it wasn't that deep because it was so big, but let me know what else I should do with this thing. So one day I filled this pull up with Orbeez in my last video, and then people wanted me to add more. And so I did. I bought like a few million more, added a bunch more water, then came back the next day, and it looked like this. And the Orbeez were a lot less watered down this time. It was just solid Orbeez for days. And when I would fall in it, I basically just got stuck, and then I tried to swim like this. Then threw some Orbeez at the camera, tried to get on this floaty, and then skateboarded this little rubber band ball into the pool. Then I tossed it way up in the air to see what the splash would look like, and here's the slow-mo. Yeah, pretty cool. Like if I should fill this car with Orbeez. So one day I ordered jumbo Orbeez to see if they were that much bigger than regular Orbeez. I filled it up in this container full of water, and I didn't know how much water to add, so I just added this much, and 24 hours later, it all looked like this. They were really big. Here's a size comparison to regular Orbeez. They looked like little bouncy balls, so then I tried to bounce them, and then this one broke. So then I took this one and bounced it and broke it like this. But they look so cool, I decided to taste one. Don't try them. Then we found this clear one that turned me upside down, and this one was even more round. So let me know what else I should do with these. So one day I ordered this human hamster wheel to float down the creek on. I got it out and aired it all the way up to test it out and run in it. And it was kind of short, but I made it work and I could roll in it, and it was pretty cool. So then I loaded it up and took it to the creek. I put it in the water, got on it, and we were off. The only problem was the creek was pretty low and there wasn't much current that day, so I had to do a lot of spinning and tried to make it out to the current. Because further down the creek there was a little bit of a current, and I tried my best to make it to it until I was there. And once I got there, it was pretty insane in this thing. Here's the video of me. And me inside, and then I just kept on going forever. No, I'm kidding, I came back, and then took a nap. So one day I ordered this new hamster ball that I thought would be better to run on water with than my old hamster ball, but it was kind of too short, but I dealt with it and made my way down to the lake to test it out. I got exhausted in the way, but I eventually made it there, and I normally put my hamster balls in creeks where there's a current, and I didn't realize you needed a current or else you just stay in the same spot, so I couldn't make it to the dock. But it was still pretty cool inside, and I tried to spin as much as possible to get some more movement, but after a long while of spinning and doing a bunch of flips, I was making no progress. So I just parked it in the shore, got out, and then started skipping rocks sad. Let me know what else you should do. Part 2 of making cardboard cars. So my brother and I headed out to race on some country road. We got to the road and then pulled up to the start line. And after that, we proceeded to rev our fake engines. And then we were off. I was pulling ahead, bound to win. And then towards the end, I started leaning right and went into the ditch. So one day I got a bunch of helium to fill up this giant 6-foot water balloon and an air mattress. I filled up the balloon until I was out of helium, and then I let it go and grabbed it. Then I tried to see what it could lift, and not really anything. Then I punched it and kicked it and slammed it on the pool, which made it fly away. Like this. And the balloon just kept going off into the distance. And the next day, it was time to try an air mattress. I filled it all the way up, and it didn't do anything. So I put it in the pool, threw the shovel on it, and hit it, then sucked some helium up, and then so did my cameraman.
Part 61.
So one day, someone commented telling me to fill this dome thing up with water, so I was going to do it. My plan was to fill this section up first, and then get in the other section, zip it up, and let it fill all the way until I was releasing it. But it started to leak through, which was running my plan. So I had to release early and let all the water out, and this is what it looked like. All the water did kind of rush in, and it made this cool little pool in the dome. It wasn't as much water as I wanted, but I still made the most of it and then left. Let me know what else I should do. One day I ordered a bunch of giant Legos to build a brick wall and run into it. So we built the brick wall, and then I got on the scooter and ran into it and completely nailed my nose and made it bleed a little bit. Yeah, it really hurt. So then we put it back together and took the rubber band ball to it. And after that, I ordered even more Legos because I was like, I need to make the wall even bigger. And then I tried to jump over it, which was kind of a fail. So let me know what else I should do or if I should buy more. So one day I decided to test some water repellent spray on some stuff, including my giant rubber band ball, which I guess is already kind of water repellent, and these shoes to walk on water, this shirt, this glove, this lampshade, and this towel, these glasses, and my name. Then I came back after 24 hours to test it. The glove didn't work, and the lampshade, the water bounced right off the side that was sprayed, and not the side that wasn't. And then the shirt kind of worked. If you get really up close, you can see the water beating off of some of it. Right there. Then these glasses that didn't really do much, and this towel that actually kind of worked way better on the side that was sprayed than the non. And it made the water just sit on the surface of the rubber band ball and just run off. Then I looked at the wet concrete and my name was really there, but then I tested the shoes and it didn't work. So one day I went to Walmart to get the stuff to retry my failed cardboard boat attempt. I got a bunch of tape and a pretty good amount of cardboard. And then I left, went home, and started building. I first began by setting up one sheet and taping it down, and then I added a second sheet and used a lot of tape to tape it to the first one. After that, I connected the two with a final sheet of cardboard and used a lot of tape to secure it. Next, I folded down all the flaps with a bunch of tape to make it thicker and float better. Then I flipped it over to tape the bottom, and I also added the base sheet and taped that down too. I finished taping that and then flipped it back over to tape the bottom up, and also added another sheet of cardboard for more support. Then finished off the boat by taping up the entire bottom to waterproof it. And it was done and ready to be tested in the creek. Like for part 2, or just watch the full video on my YouTube at Dylan Ayres. Cardboard boat part 2. So I picked up the boat and put it in my brother's truck along with an oar. Then we went down to the creek and I carried it down. Then I walked out to my launching point, got in, and pushed off.
Good job, boy.
It was working. I kept on rowing and it eventually started to leak. But I still kept on rowing. I was approaching a current, so I rowed it to land and dragged it all the way back.
It worked.
I rowed in it some more, and then I drug it up. Full videos on my YouTube at Dylan Ayres. So one day I got my drone, a leash, and another leash, and then I hooked the leashes together and put it on my drone and taped it on. And then I headed outside to walk my dog with the drone. It took off, but it couldn't lift both leashes, so I took one off. And then it flew, and I tried to hook it to my dog, but accidentally flew it into him. So I hooked it to one leash, and then hooked it to myself. Then I picked up the controller and took myself on a walk. The drone flew, leading the way, and I just followed it like a dog. And when it went high, so did I. And I just followed the drone wherever it went. Yeah. So one day I got a bunch of tape and a box, and then I took it outside to build a small boat. I flipped it over and covered the entire bottom in tape. And then I put tape all around the sides to waterproof the whole boat. I then flipped it back over and cut off all the flaps and then taped them into the boat. And added a bunch of tape along the edges to seal it. And then I added some balloons just for fun. Then I picked it up and put it in my brother's truck, and then we headed to the creek to test it out. I walked all the way down there, put it in the water, got in.
Oh my god. Oh, you're already taking in water, dude.
And it sank. So I dumped it and tried again. And it didn't work. So I popped a balloon and then I skipped a rock. So one day I turned on the TV and the Corona stuff seemed pretty serious. So I got up and got a bag of Rubik's Cube, some tape, and a fake gold chain. Then I got some Reese's in the kitchen for food. And then I went out the back door and headed for my cardboard treehouse. I climbed up it, and I was going to stay there until this was all over. I made it up there, opened my bag, and I took everything out, and I also ate my Reese's. I put on my fake chain, and then I accidentally got tape stuck to my wrist. Yeah, but I got it off. And then I just slept until it was all over. And I got up and packed everything up. And then I said,
I'm coming back out, world. Oh, thanks you.
Then I made my way down the treehouse, using the mattress to crash on. Like for part 2. So one day I went to Walmart and got some balloons, a helium tank, and some string. And then I headed home to tie a bunch of balloons to toilet paper and then send it off. Don't do this part at home.
Hi. Jack, oh my word!
Then I made my first balloon, and we were best friends. I drew a face on it to make it more real, and then we hung out. Yeah. But then I let go and it flew away. And then I went back inside to get busy. I started out by blowing up a ton of balloons and putting them on the ceiling, and I didn't know how many I needed, so I just blew up as many as I could until the tank was empty and I was on my last balloon. I'm gonna take this toilet paper and this duct tape, some balloons, and I'm gonna make it fly. Like for part 2 where I let it go. Part 2 of making a cardboard boat. So I put the boat in the truck and some flippers, and then we took it down to the creek. I walked down there and put my boat in the water. I then got in, pushed myself off, and used my flippers to row myself. And it worked.
It's working.
I rowed myself out to the middle.
Haha, losers. This is to everyone who said I couldn't make it. I'm in a cardboard boat now.
And then I rowed even further and laid down.
I'm just chilling, bro.
I then decided to see how far I could row it.
Don't know when I met you, but I met you.
I made it pretty far, but the water started to get in and I started to sink.
It's sinking.
It went under and it was pretty freezing.
You know, my boat may have sank, but at the end of the day, I'd call this a success.
I then dragged the boat up and took it home. So one day I went to Walmart and got Flex Seal to test on random junk. I started off with a basketball, sprayed the entire thing until it was completely covered, and then I moved on to a plastic ball and did it. And after that I broke a hoverboard that already didn't work and sprayed it. Then I did this old ramp with paper covering the big hole. Next I sprayed this broken snow shovel and came back the next day when everything was dry. And I kicked the basketball, messed around with it, and it mainly just felt like rubber. Next up was the shovel, and it looked pretty repaired until I tried to dig with it. Now here's the plastic ball, and here's the hoverboard that fell apart when I tried to touch it. But the ramp actually looked pretty good, so I decided to jump it. And it held up, so I jumped it again even faster. And it didn't hold up. Let me know what else I should try. So one day I decided to fill a giant hamster ball up with water and get in it. I moved it to level ground and then put the hose in to let it fill up. Then I put some wood down so it wouldn't roll and let it fill. And here's the checkpoint. It's pretty cool looking, and I hit it on the side and then added some more air. And after that, I let it fill up to this point. And I'm going to stop it when it gets to the zipper. And it got there, so I stopped it. Then I put some goggles on and unzipped it, but it broke. But I got in anyway. I went in and swam to the side. And I looked like a fish. And then I struggled to get out. Then I threw the snorkel and went back under with just the goggles. And it was pretty cool. I swam around, did a circle, and then did another circle, and then struggled again to come up. And it was kind of like a water balloon, so I jumped on it, rocked on it, flipped on it, and then swam on it. Let me know any other ideas you have for me to try. So one day I got a comment that said I should launch my giant rubber band ball in my giant slingshot, so I pulled it back, and it did that, as expected. But I also have this little rubber band ball that I pulled back and launched. It went pretty far, and then I launched it in my brother. Right there. And after that, I launched this pool noodle, and then launched it at my brother, but missed that. And then I got this GoPro and decided to launch it with the camera on. I pulled it back, and here's the camera's angle. It spun all around and hit the ground. I found it, and it was still okay, so I tried it again. And this angle was pretty cool. There's my brother picking it up. So I've learned these things are pretty tough, and comment what else I should launch. So one day someone commented for me to freeze an egg in a block of ice and then shoot it out of my giant slingshot. So I put it in a cup of water. I added tape over the top, then put it in a freezer, and the next day it was rock solid. I then ran it under some hot water and got it out of the cup. And it was ready to launch. The only problem was the egg was stuck in the corner, but I'll just aim for the other side. I put it in the slingshot, pulled back, and launched. And this shot was kind of bad, but it landed, and I ran to it, and pretty much nothing happened. So I put it back in the slingshot for round 2, and it hit this tree. Well, bam. I went out to it, and the egg looked fine at first, but that was only because it was frozen. The egg was actually cracked. So then I just threw it against a tree, and then found a bat and obliterated it. Sort of. The egg was still intact. So then I just ate it. So one day someone commented for me to tie 4 bottles of Diet Coke and Mentos together and then throw it. So I got Diet Coke, Mentos, and tape, and I was going to tie these 4 bottles together. I got the tape out, wrapped it all the way around, then put the Mentos in, one by one, and all the bottles, 3 each, then took it out of the cul-de-sac and threw it. and it did nothing. So I threw it again, and it did that. It was kind of a fail, but I just threw 2 bottles separate, and it did that, which was kind of cool. And then I wrapped 2 bottles together, thinking maybe that would work better, and it did a little bit, but not really. So then I threw another one, and yeah. So after destroying our microwave with my 100-pound rubber band ball, someone left a comment saying to do a phone. But first, I'm going to do this broken TV my neighbor gave me. I put the ball on there and threw it. And it didn't do very much damage, so I just threw it again. And it mainly just bounces on it, so I stepped on it a bunch and then got out a giant snowball that was left over. And that was pretty cool and left me with a snowball. And then I got out the phone. I set it down, then threw the ball on it, but it missed. So I threw it again, and it cracked it. Look at it. I'm just kidding, this is a fake phone. It's actually smashed now. So one day, after freezing a giant water balloon and it being hollow, people wanted me to do it bigger and better. And it was going to get colder, so I'm gonna. I let it fill up for even longer this time. And I was also going to let it sit for even longer. I zip-tied it shut, and then let it sit and came back the next day to check it out. And I could stand on it. It was pretty frozen. We gave it another day, and then came back out again. And the balloon had popped somehow, but the ice was still rock solid, and I could stand on it, kinda. I ripped the balloon off, then pushed it over, and it did that. And I threw the ice, and it was really, really strong. It's pretty thick ice. So one day I put my rubber band ball back on the zip line to crush some more stuff. I went to Walmart, got this thing, this lamp, this clock, and this other clock, and this weird picture. I put the lamp together like this, and then I first started with the alarm clock and shut it right off. Then hit it with a baseball bat. And then I did the other clock like this. And after that, we set up the picture of whatever this thing is. And it got crushed. Then we put this thing, put the GoPro inside, and it made a cool looking slow-mo. But there wasn't enough damage, so we did it again. And again. Just look at it, getting smashed. And then I just hit it with a baseball bat. Then hit the lamp. Let me know what else I should smash. So one day, it was super windy outside, so I went to Walmart and decided to get all the stuff to make a homemade parachute. I had duct tape and trash bags, and then I lined up the trash bags 3x2 and duct taped them all together on both sides until I had something that resembled a parachute. And then I picked it up and took it outside to see how it blew in the wind. And the wind could catch it, so I was fairly sure it would work. And before I used it, I wanted to test it on a 5-pound weight. And it didn't do good on that run, so I threw it off the roof, and it did a little bit better. Here it is. And then I threw it off the carport after that, and it did all right. So then I jumped. Yeah, don't try it home. So one day, I was bored in quarantine and decided to take some of my cardboard and make a cardboard stair slide. I taped the first piece down and then got an air mattress and placed it at the bottom of the stairs because safety first, don't try this at home. I then added a second piece, taped it down, and then added a third, and then a fourth. After that, I threw a bunch of pillows down, and it was done. So I went down.
That was insane.
And then I went down again. And tossed the pillow to my brother so he could go down. I went another time. And then my older brother went. And we just went a bunch more times. So one day I got out my giant hamster ball to fill with ball pit balls, cause why not? Now this one has a hole in it, unlike the last one, but I'm gonna go in it anyway. I splashed around in it, kicked it, and then went off. And it was pretty crazy. I don't know how to describe it, but then some balls started to leak out, and even more. And after all the balls fell out, the wind picked up and started blowing them everywhere. But we got all those cleaned up, and then the next day filled it back up because I had an idea to tape up the hole and try it again. And it worked just fine. None of the balls were leaking. I ran through the puddle, then ran down the road, then ran back, ran through the puddle again, did another flip, and then came to the stop, and here's what the inside looks like, and let me know what else I should try. One day I decided to hang a giant hamster ball from the ceiling of the warehouse and make it a swing with me in it. And also make an actual swing. But first I wanted to play with the ball. I shot a hoop, then I bounced on it like this, and then ran and jumped and almost fell. Then did a flip and another flip. And remember, don't try anything you see in this video at home. But first I wanted to make the swing. I tied it to the ceiling and it worked pretty well. We had a decent swing. And next was the hamster ball that I also tied to the ceiling and then hung on to make sure it would hold my weight. I got in, let myself get aired up, and when we removed the beanbag, I was hitting the floor. So I had to tie the hamster ball up even higher and then get in again. And this time we removed the table and it worked. I was floating. So I got a push and I was swinging in the hamster ball. It was amazing. I couldn't believe it even worked. I spun around for quite a while, then got a bigger push and did this, and then decided to flip over and do this. But yeah, it was a pretty neat experience. And when I got out, I almost got stuck and then fell. So one day it came to my attention that I had to protect my giant 470-pound rubber band ball. So my first line of defense was this slingshot that I mounted and struggled with, but eventually got. And then I threw a cardboard fort over it and wrote "not ball," so no one would think the ball was there. And later that night, the defense would be tested. Someone snuck in through the window, fell on this bean bag, and then went into the warehouse hunting for the ball. And I thought my cardboard fort had worked. He walked up to it and he read it, but he still lifted it up. So then I had to resort to the slingshot, and it made him fall, and then he tried to run away. But the second line of defense caught him. So then we just tossed him in the ball pit. Like if I should make it more secure. So one day I wanted to prank my friend by surprising him with a really bad new car. So I looked on Facebook Marketplace for the cheapest cars I could find that still ran, until eventually I found this one. The car had some damage and smelled pretty bad inside, but it still ran. So we started spray painting it to make it look even worse. I wrote my name, this line, and I just wanted to make the car look as funny as possible. My friend and I added these racing stripes, and then I put a car tree in it to make it smell good. And it was finished. It looked really good, and it was ready to give to him. I invited him to the warehouse the next day and told him I had a surprise. And showed him.
What is this? It's your new car, bro. I know you've been needing a car. Well, my car's in the shop. What in the heck? Does it even run? Thanks, then.
Yeah, I know you've been needing a car.
He looked really confused and said,
What's really going on here, though?
The AC kind of works.
I told him it was his car and let him take it for a test drive. And then...
This isn't actually like my car, is it?
What, bro? Do you not like it?
And he didn't really act like he wanted the car, so my friend and I kind of got upset. After that, he spray painted it some more.
Costs about $250.
Then we did some joyriding, got on the roof, and hit the rubber band ball. So one day, my friend and I went out to this giant snow pile in the middle of a parking lot to build a giant igloo. We got to digging for a long time. He would dig out the hole, and I would scrape it out with the big shovel like this. We repeated this process for quite some time until eventually it looked like this. We were starting to make our way in, and it was starting to look like an igloo. And our next goal was trying to make it taller so we could easily dig. And after a lot more time, we got it looking like this, but we still had more to go. It had been over an hour, and we were just throwing snow everywhere. Then we saw this truck drifting in the parking lot, and here's our progress so far. We accidentally put a hole in the roof. Here it is. But it's a pretty big igloo that you can even stand up in. But the sun was coming down, so we had to leave, like if we should keep going. So one day I went to Walmart to retry my last 2 failed cardboard boat attempts. I got duct tape, Gorilla Tape, and 5 sheets of cardboard, and then I headed home to build it. I felt confident I could make it work. I set the stuff down and began to build. I cut the first sheet and then folded it into a half boat. I then taped up the seams and cut the flaps off. Then I flipped it over and taped up the bottom. And then flipped it back over and pushed another piece into it. I taped them together and then cut the flaps off. Then flipped it over and taped the bottoms together. And then put another piece of cardboard on the bottom for support. And next, I covered the entire bottom of the boat in duct tape to make it waterproof. It was looking pretty good, and I felt pretty confident. I added a piece of cardboard, and it was done. Third time's a charm, like for part 2. Part 2 of living in a cardboard treehouse because of Corona. So I came down after it was all over, and then I went inside. And everyone was gone, so I went to my car. I got in and drove where I thought people might be. I got out and walked around, and it was all empty and abandoned. There wasn't a single soul in sight. I contemplated life for a second, and then I went back to my car and just drove off. I came to a stop out in the middle of nowhere, got out, and just took off walking. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I was alone in this world, and that was okay. This is all a joke, by the way. Part 2 of riding in a cardboard boat. So now my brother got on with me and we rowed out.
Oh, God. Dude, this is so weird.
I waved goodbye to land, and then we rowed to another shore. But then we had the idea to row into the big current, so we both got in again and started rowing. We made it in the current, and it was pretty fun.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
We were spinning around.
Oh, God.
And almost hit a log.
Back to another current. Start pushing.
We eventually got it back to land and then pulled the boat back towards the bridge. Part 2 of making a cardboard treehouse. So I got a ladder and some wood, and then I cut off a tree limb. Then I dragged the box up the ladder and positioned it into the tree. And then started hammering wood in to support it. I put beams all around and then got help, cause yeah.
Good job, guys.
I added some more supports for the floor, and it was ready. I made a door, then I sawed off some excess wood, and got in. And it was really cool. I'd never had a tree house before, so this was pretty amazing. My brother came in and I started to shake it. And then we added an air mattress on top of it. Sub to my YouTube to watch me spend the night in it. So one day I decided to fly out and see the Logan Paul fight. And the cheapest ticket was Spirit Airlines. And the only thing really bad was the landing, which I didn't get good footage of. And before the fight, we chilled at the pool a little bit, went to the beach. I picked up some seaweed and I had a feeling Logan would win. So we headed to the fight. But we accidentally went to the Hard Rock Casino. So then we went to the stadium and these two guys fought first. And we just waited around until it was time for the actual fight. And when the fight started, they got booed for just standing still. But eventually they started kind of fighting. There was also a lot of hugs and a lot of dodges. But there was also some decent hits. And eventually it was over and I got in my Lambo. Kidding, I waited an hour and a half for an Uber. But then the next day we decided to kind of explore Miami. And I was going to get in this water but didn't because I saw a shark. Then I saw these two cats. And the next day we missed our flight, so we had to stay another day. But you know, at least I made Logan Paul richer. So one day someone commented on this video where I tried to replicate this video and said I had the timing all wrong. And they were right. This was my first attempt at it and it didn't do anything but make a bunch of waves. So I went to Walmart and got a rounder floaty and then tried again. And this time I tried to make the timing. That first try was better. And then the second try I did this and really tried to time it up. And it was my best run yet. And I actually got the wave to knock me down. And I also used a bunch of slow-mo in this video because I accidentally shot it in slow-mo. You can even see on this next run then a wave hitting the ring of the pool and then me falling. And then on this next one I did it really good and went like that. And you know I had to use that slow-mo. Comment any other ideas you want me to try. So one day I decided to turn this warehouse into a cool video spot. Well, first I had to clean the place up, so I started by power washing the entire warehouse. And I actually power washed a few more times off camera, but this is the one I filmed the entire thing of. I washed the entire floor and then put some of this acid down, scraped some of this stuff up, and it looked like this. Then it was time to paint. Bam. It looked really good painted and was almost done, but I got this beanbag, this hoop, this trampoline that I did a flip on, and then I shot the hoop, did a dunk thing, and there's also this loft thing, but comment any video ideas you have for me. So one day after making two giant airplanes that could kind of fly, but they didn't fly very good on the windy day, so I took them back out on a less windy day and tried again. And the first one was just a total fail. It fell off the cliff and into the water. So I tried to throw the second plane, and it did a little bit better, but still kind of had an angle down. But the second flight of the second plane did pretty good. And the second flight of the first plane did pretty bad again, and off into the trees. So then I just jumped into the water out of failure. So one day I was dropping my giant 160-pound rubber band ball off a bucket lift, and I had some cool stuff to drop on it, including an inflatable pool, an air mattress, and a giant water balloon. I started with this, and it did that. Here's the underwater slow-mo. It hit the water so hard it did this to the ball. Then I got out the air mattress and dropped it on it as well, and it didn't even pop. Look at it. But it did lose some bands when it dropped. So then I tried again with the pineapple on it, but I missed the pineapple. Then I did the water balloon, and it completely smashed it. Here's the slow-mo. And then it rolled off and went into the woods, and it just kept going down this very steep hill. Like if you want to see how I get it out. So after trying and failing to fix dents with hot glue, my comment section was filled with people telling me to let it cool down for even longer. So that's what I'm going to do. Here I am. Here's the time lapse of it cooling all the way until I didn't even have to touch it. And I then pulled it off and it didn't work. However, it is a pretty big dent. But there's other comments that said to try a plunger, so I tried that for a long time too, using fire and this plunger. This one might have worked if it was a smaller dent, so don't try this at home. So one day I decided to turn my giant 110-pound rubber band ball into a wrecking ball using my backyard zip line. But first I pushed it onto the storm shelter and ran it off, and then started tying it up. I put it on a ladder and got it hooked to the zip line, and then I tested it out, and it was pretty cool looking. And now it was time to wreck some stuff, starting with this broken piece of furniture. And then I turned it to its side, and it absolutely destroyed it. The drawer was broken, and I thought it was good for one more hit. And it was obliterated. And then I decided to do this trash can. Yeah, let me know what else I should destroy. Part 2 of making another cardboard boat. So I put the boat in my brother's truck and then we headed to the creek. We got there and I got my oar out of the truck and then we headed down. And I was pretty sure my new design would work. We got down, I took off my shoes, and then I put my boat in the water. And my feet got pretty muddy. Dang. I got in the boat, but couldn't quite balance my weight. And ended up tipping over.
Even it out. Oh!
So I got up, got the water out of the boat, and tried again. But this time, I fell even harder. So I got out and, well, I tried again. Yeah, it was a pretty big fail.
I'm done with boats.
I dragged the boat up, hit it a few times, and then for some reason I got in the cold water, ran around, and threw a rock, and dragged the boat home. So one day, my brother and I decided to go dumpster diving at a phone store. I looked in the dumpster and it was kind of gross. So my brother got in and looked around while I waited outside of the dumpster. After looking for a little bit, he found a screen protector and he kept looking and eventually gave up. So I decided to get in and give it my shot. And I bent down to look inside a box, and inside was this.
What? No way.
I looked at it and then I got out and began to open it.
Alright, let's open it up.
Like for part 2. So one day someone commented that I should make a second rubber band ball, and I already have 3. This one, and my giant one. This one's huge. I can sit on it, but not sit on the other ones because they weigh 0.6 pounds and 15 pounds. Well, the giant one is 777 pounds, but I'm still waiting on a shipment of bands, so I'm going to add on to the other one. I just grabbed a bunch of random bands at Walmart, then went back to the warehouse, threw the ball on the table, dumped out a bunch of bands, and got to placing. I started with all the colored bands to make it look really cool, and it did. It ended up looking like this. It was cool. Then I moved on to these ones to make it really tight and compact. And after a while, I was done. Here it is. Rolled it off the table and compared it next to the giant ball, then my head, and then threw it as high as I could. And it's pretty bouncy and weighs 17 pounds. Like if I should keep doing this ball too. So one day I ordered this giant bubble dome thing because I saw it on the internet and thought it looked cool and had to buy it. I got it all the way aired up and it was pretty cool looking. I opened it up, went inside, and it kind of felt like one big quarantine chamber. I was completely separated from the outside world. Here it is inside, and then I got bored and decided to put my giant rubber band ball in it. I put that in a beanbag and then chilled. So comment any cool ideas you have for this thing and I'll do them. So one day I went to one of those warehouses that has overstocked Amazon pallets you can buy, and I bought this one for $500 to see what was in it, like a cool mystery box. I opened it up at my warehouse and there was these pillows, a sleeping bag, a fan, a dog bed, and this automatic dog food feeder. And this thing that we didn't know what it was, but it actually ended up being a sword. And at this point, I was already happy with my purchase. Next was some camping stuff, a Christmas tree, a trash can, a nice microwave, a not-so-nice microwave, a bottle of water, a Serta rolly chair, this thing, and this outdoor bench. And we added everything up to be worth over $1,000. Then we tested out the sword and first used the wrong side, but then destroyed a can. And comment down below if I should try to sell all this stuff or just use it. So one day, someone commented saying I should freeze the jumbo Orbeez. So that's what I'm going to do. I put them in the freezer, and the next day they looked like this. They were all stuck together, and it wasn't as cool as I thought it was going to be. I tried putting hot water on it, and it didn't really fix it. But I ordered some more jumbo Orbeez to test another comment, which was pouring lighter fluid in to see if it would soak them and light them on fire. But when I came back the next day, it didn't soak up any of the lighter fluid. I was disappointed, but I had one more idea, pouring all these little Orbeez onto this trampoline and jumping, which it looked really cool. Then I did a flip. So one day I got another super strong magnet to go magnet fishing with. First I wanted to test it, picking up this chair first, then this helium tank, and it did a pretty good job, so I was ready to go fishing after I threw this frisbee thing. I first took it out to this pond to test it and threw it out, pulled in, and for a while I was getting a lot of nothing. And after a long while, eventually on a really big throw, I hooked something and pulled up this thing. Kind of bizarre. Then I dropped it and accidentally pushed it out further with my magnet, but I got it. And then the next day we went to a different pond to test. I dragged the magnet along and pulled up this. Yeah. And then I threw it back and pulled up whatever this is. It was like a coin and a really black piece of metal. And after that I felt something really hook on, but I couldn't get it. So one day after making Shrek entirely from Rubik's Cubes, I decided I wanted to frame it on the wall as art. But I had to put it in a different frame that would be better. And when I tried to lower it, I thought I ruined it, but I fixed it and then re-lowered it, put it in this, and then put it in the better frame. This was the frame that would hang on the wall, and it was a lot more secure. We poured resin all over it and did the best we could to smear it. It's probably not perfect. I've never done that before. Then we sanded the frame and painted the whole thing black to make the orange pop. And once that was all finished, we hung it on the wall, and here it is. It looks really good. When you walk in, this is what you see. One day I decided to take my old giant paper airplane that didn't fly very well and recreate it with great stuff. So we coated the whole thing in this great stuff and outlined it until it was done. And then we let it dry and came back. And the paper wasn't very easy to peel off. It took quite a while, but eventually I got it and it looked like this. And then the next day it was ready to fly. Yeah, the first flight wasn't great, neither was the second, and not really the third. It was a little bit better. And after another fail, I cut some off and had this flight. It was pretty good. Then I threw it in a pool and jumped in. So one day I took my giant hamster ball out in the rain and filled it up with more water to slide around in. It was pretty cold, but it was also really slick and fun to slide around on. You could just run around and then start flying in circles. Here I am with a lot of momentum. Then I got cold, so I took a break and ran to a puddle and then went and jumped in my hot tub. After that, I got out, filled the ball back up with more water, and got back in and rolled around through the puddle, slipped around, ran down the road, and did a flip. And then did another one. So one day, my brother and his friend had an idea to take all the ball pit balls from my storm shelter and put them all in our friend Joe's office, who's an insurance agent. So we transported them all to the office, and we had to put them all in here. But first, I spun around in the chair a little bit, and then got to pouring, and we poured out all the ball pit balls, and it was completely covered. I set the GoPro up. We shut the lights off and left, and he was supposed to come back in the morning, but he actually ended up coming in at midnight. And here was his reaction.
What the hell is this? No way. You guys got one this time. Next time, it's not gonna happen.
He then messaged me, so I zoomed over there to get his reaction.
What were you doing back here?
What do you mean? I come back all the time.
Here it is, completely covered.
Dylan, you're still recording me?
Part 2 of dumpster diving. So I hopped out to open up the iPhone box, and yeah, so I got mad, threw it on the ground, and walked off. And then my brother got in to try one more time. He looked around, and then I said, "Check that box."
Dude, what?
And oddly enough, inside that box was a Wii.
Here.
So I took it,
Wow. Dude.
put it in my car, and then drove home to see if it would work. I got home, plugged it in, and turned it on. It turned on, and inside of it was Wii Sports. Then I turned on the TV, and it worked. Part 2 of making a giant paper airplane. So I picked it up and walked it over to my car, and struggled to put it in my trunk. But I got it, and I was ready to throw it off a bridge. I got there, got my plane, and went to go throw it off.
3, 2, 1.
And it kind of flew. I went down and got it, and then I went back up to try again. I threw it, and it landed in a tree. I got it, and then some guy fishing told us to add some supports to the wings. So I went to Walmart and got some duct tape and some pencils. I did the best I could to tape them all to the wings and support it. And then I ran up the stairs like Rocky. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I was at the top of the hill, and then I threw the plane. And it was pretty windy, so it didn't fly very well. I kept trying over and over again. The wind just kept taking it, and after a bunch of fails, I just did a really bad front flip. So one day I wanted to make a cardboard saw like the paper saw I made. So I traced out a blade, cut it out, and then screwed it onto the angle grinder. And then I was ready to cut some fruit. I turned on my saw and started in on the apple. And it was working pretty well, so I kept going. And eventually I started in on the grapefruit, which ended up ruining my blade. So I took it off and made a new one from a cereal box. And then I screwed it onto the grinder and started trying to cut the cereal box in half. And it did pretty well and almost cut it entirely in half. And after that, I started back in on the grapefruit, which ended up ruining this blade too. So I ripped the grapefruit in half and then threw it in the woods, and also threw the rotten apple in the woods. So one day I went to the party store and got a bunch of giant balloons and a helium tank, and then went home to see what I could make fly away. I already had 2 blown up. I blew up the first red one, tied it, and then I blew up the second blue one and tied it. And now I had 4 balloons. And then I twisted and taped all the strings together and tried to lift up a weight, but it failed. So then I tried an apple, and it worked. After that, I had an idea to tie a box to the strings and send something away. I trimmed up the box and forgot the 4th balloon. So I tied it on and then went outside and taped a Tesla Hot Wheel to the box and tried to send it to space. And it went down, so I ripped off some cardboard and it still failed. I ripped off some more and it went to my roof, then fell off. I let it go a final time and it took off and left on into space. Part 2 of making a giant paper airplane. So I made this giant paper airplane and threw it off a bridge, but it failed. So I went home, assessed the damage, and put it in the dumpster. Then I reviewed the footage and knew what I had to do. I went to Walmart, got more poster board, then went home, swept the driveway, and set all my stuff down to begin construction. I again started by placing the 4 sheets together, and this time I used Gorilla Tape and also used a different type of poster board. I folded the plane lots of times and just began making all the necessary, paper airplane folds while adding tape until I was completely done. And it was done and ready to be tested. Like for part 2 or watch the full video on my YouTube at Dylan Ayres later today. So one day I visited Soup Timmy, a Rubik's Cube artist, because a little while back he inspired me to make my own Rubik's Cube art, and I ended up making Shrek. But Timmy's like a Rubik's Cube pro, and he can solve a Rubik's Cube in under 10 seconds. I scrambled one for him, and it's almost as if he slows down time, because he got it done in literally 7.6 seconds. Then he showed me he can even solve one with one hand in 30 seconds while playing with a ping pong ball. He even has the fastest time while solving a cube hula hoop. I then had him mix up a cube for me, and then I beat his record, and finished off his giant art wall. Guess I'm just a pro. No, but for real, this stuff is insane. He even showed me a magic trick where he instantly solved the cube, then showed me this giant cube and a fidget spinner. So one day I bought a watermelon because a lot of people want to know how I made this giant 600-pound rubber band ball, and it all started with a watermelon and a lot of rubber bands. And I'm going to do it all again with this watermelon so you guys can see. I put a bunch of rubber bands on the watermelon until eventually this happens. Bam, and all the rubber bands fly together and create a little ball. And I was kind of covered in watermelon, but I had this little ball, so I was happy. We threw the watermelon at the car, and then we were ready to make this ball neat. And I spent a little while double knotting a bunch of bands around this ball until it was pretty round and neat, and bounced pretty good. And I even crushed it with the giant rubber band ball, so let me know what else I should do. So one day I decided to fill my giant hamster ball up with ball pit balls, and I've done this before, but this time I'm going to do it with a lot more balls. I took all the balls from this dome, got in the ball, and here it was, all filled up. It was crazy. I rolled around in it, then rolled it outside, fell down, and here was the view. Then my friend Brendan tried to throw stuff at me and roll me over. Then I decided to test if I could ride this electric scooter in, and I got in with it, but I couldn't make enough momentum for the scooter to go. So I just got in with this hoverboard instead, rolled around, did a lot of spinning stuff, and then I fell again, and went outside. Let me know what else I should try. So one day someone commented telling me to take my giant 580-pound rubber band ball back to the pawn shop like old days, but it's too big, so I'm going to take all this random stuff in this little rubber band ball bag.
What happened to it? Did you put it in water?
And I told him it was a different ball, then showed him a picture of the big one.
Gosh, how big is that now?
I said 580, and then he said I should just put it on eBay. And then I moved on and asked him what he'd give me for this thing.
About $50 in rubber bands, $30.
And I couldn't sell it for that, so I had to move on to this ball.
Super high.
Wow, yeah, that's cool. Did you get this at like Chuck E. Cheese?
And then I told him the price.
$16. I paid $8 for it, so I wanted to double my money.
Oh,
Yeah, we didn't end up making a deal on the ball either, so I moved on to this tiny rubber band gun. And I threw him a high ball number.
$200.
He gave me a weird look, so then I just moved on to the last item.
Magic, basically.
I said it was super rare water repellent spray, and I wanted a lot of money for it, but he didn't budge, so then he tried to sell me some stuff, including these cool shades. So one day I rented a one-man bucket lift to drop my 160-pound rubber band ball on top of stuff. And the first time I went up, I just dropped it on nothing to see how it would bounce. And here it was. Bounced pretty high. And remember, don't try this at home. Then we got out this car to smash. Here's the slow-mo. It put a pretty big dent in the roof. Then my dad went up and dropped it on it. And it put another pretty big dent in the roof. Then I moved onto the windshield and completely caved it in. Here's that slow-mo. And then I did it again. Here's an inside perspective. Yeah, the car was pretty crushed. And then I dropped Mentos and Coke. And this one was the best rocket I ever done in my life. Just look at it. Like if I should crush some more stuff. So one day I went to Walmart and got all the rubber bands they had to make another rubber band ball. Because a lot of people have been wanting me to cut my giant 300-pound rubber band ball in half with a 1,000-degree knife. But I don't want to do that, so I'm going to make another smaller one, starting with this small one and adding a bunch more bands to it. Until eventually it looked like this. And it wasn't near as big as my giant one, but check out this cool little trick when you drop them. It launches them. And it was time to cut first this even smaller one. It cut it right in half and burnt right through it. And then this one. And it's worked its way through. And eventually I sawed a little bit and it just popped all the bands off. Remember, don't try any of this stuff at home. It wouldn't go through the tinfoil ball, so I just threw the knife at the tree and stuck it. So one day I ordered around 300 Rubik's Cubes to try to make one of those paintings that I keep seeing on TikTok. We made a frame, I tested it out, and it would do. It was alright. But then I had to think what I would make and how I would make it. And I decided I would make Shrek using a color grid type thing. So then I started placing cubes, and I underestimated how long it would take. It ended up taking like 4 hours. And I didn't have black, so I ended up using orange. So when I got done, I rearranged some cubes and also took some stickers off and made it look even better. And the further you go, the more it looks like Shrek. One day after dropping my giant 160-pound rubber band ball on a giant water balloon, it kept on rolling and rolling into the woods down a steep hill, and I had to go get it. So I made my way down into the woods and to the rubber band ball. And a thorn hit me when I tried to get it out, and then I just kept on pushing as much as I could. And it was really heavy at 160 pounds going up a pretty big hill, and I kept falling, but I made my way up and was really tired. But I still had this piece of furniture to smash, so I dropped it on it. Here's the slow-mo. And the pineapple was still alive. And then I got out this 1968 Camaro. Just kidding. So one day someone commented for me to drop my rubber band ball on a microwave. So I'm going to do that. I'm also going to crush this piece of furniture along with a few other things with this giant 100-pound rubber band ball. So I got in the ladder and threw it. And it did that. I then picked it up and plugged it in to test if it would still turn on, and it did, but the doors broke. Next, I got this jug of water I just filled up with the hose, and it did that. Then this bouncy ball that was way louder in person. And last but not least was this piece of furniture I found in my attic, and it did that. Let me know what else I should crush with my rubber band ball. So one day someone said I should try to go to the pawn shop again, so I'm going to take my rubber band ball, this chain, and some other stuff. I put the ball in my car and then got my bling on and then went inside the pawn shop and said,
What's going on? I'm back. Got a few more things.
Hey, what you got today?
Bling on this
Wow,
time.
that's blingy.
First off, I got this tiny rubber band ball.
Is this an offspring of that one?
Sure, yeah.
Having babies? What's up with that?
Want to buy it?
I then told him I wanted $50 for it, and he said,
$50 for $5 worth of rubber bands? Better pass on that one.
so I then threw it and got out my genuine gold watch.
Gold watch.
And he didn't seem to think it was gold.
You got screwed.
Walmart, what a ripoff.
They do that to a lot of people.
Probably explains why it was like $10.
And after that, I got out my chain and said it was probably
This much
worth.
Gold's probably worth about $30K.
He looked at me like I was crazy and then waited.
90 grams.
Is that a lot?
No.
Oh.
And he ended up passing on the chain, so I got out the rubber band ball. It was 80 pounds last time I brought it in, and now over 100.
You're a lot stronger than you look.
It would take a lot for me to let this thing go. What's your best offer?
You got $150 for it.
And I knew I couldn't do it. So I threw the ball down and headed out, knowing I'll probably never sell it. So one day I decided to make another aluminum foil ball because I couldn't find my other one. So I took a roll and patted it down to a ball and went all around until the roll was empty. And I had this, and then I got another roll and wrapped it all around. And I ended up with this. Then I put the final roll on, patted it down, and bam, an asteroid. Yeah, it's a decent sized ball. I threw it up in the air and then I compared it to my rubber band ball. Then I dropped the 75-pound rubber band ball all over and it made it this cool chair. And then asteroids started falling to the earth. Like if I should keep on going. So one day someone commented that I should cover my rubber band ball in Flex Seal, and seeing as I broke it and it needed a little bit of fixing because there's glass shards on it, I thought, why not? So I rolled it out to my yard and started spraying it. I sprayed all around it until it was done. Actually, I gave it a little bit more and then let it sit. And the next day I came back and it had rained, but it was still solid compared to the side that wasn't Flex Seal. I picked it up and took it out to the cul-de-sac and it bounced the same and was just kind of stale. I rolled it into the basketball goal. Boom. Then stood on it, and let me know what else I should do. So one day someone commented to drop my rubber band ball from somewhere high, and I don't live anywhere where I can really do that because it weighs 65 pounds and could hurt someone. So I took it to this abandoned race car track, took it to the second story, and dropped it. And it bounced and then just rolled into the ground, and I was like, I gotta do something else. So I went down to this pipe, and I'm like, can I put it in there? So I looked, and it just gradually got smaller, so my ball would have got stuck. Glad I didn't do that. But I just ended up throwing it off and it bounced off into the fence. And it got this mark on it. Oh well, let me know what else I should do with my rubber band ball. Part 2 of tying a bunch of balloons to toilet paper. So I put the duct tape on and then added some more balloons. But when I tried to attach the toilet paper, it was too heavy. So I got a smaller roll and it worked.
It works.
Then I got a pen and paper out and wrote a nice letter. And then I attached it to the toilet paper.
You're welcome, America.
And then I let it go. Now don't get triggered. It's all just CGI. Computer generated image. But anyway, it kept going and it flew pretty far and it was gone. Part 2 of snorkeling for stuff in the creek. So I went under and I found a watch. I brought it up and then I went back under to look for more stuff. And then I got up on this thing and found some coins. After that, I jumped in.
Not deep enough for that.
And then I got back up to scan for stuff. And after that, I got back in to look underwater. Then I stood up and fell down and dropped my phone in the current. And I thought I lost it forever. I got up and started frantically looking.
Jack, I got my phone.
And eventually my brother found it stuck in between two rocks.
I lost my phone in there and barely found it.
And then I left, probably forever.
Leaving this creek, bro.
So one day I decided to take a metal detector and a shovel and go look for stuff in my yard. I heard my first beep and it was just a BB, so I kept going. And I heard another beep, so I got my shovel and started digging. And it was a Hot Wheel.
A car.
So I put it in my pocket and kept looking. And then I heard another beep, so I ran and got my shovel and started digging. And there was nothing there.
Fire!
So I kept on going until I heard another beep. And then I dug it up. And it was an old toy.
How did this get in the ground?
And then I walked around my yard some more with no luck.
Yeah, I'm leaving.
So then I left and went to an abandoned race car track. And I found a battery. And then I just kept looking around, roaming. And I heard another beep. And the full video will be on my YouTube at Dylan Ayres. So one day my dog was acting like he wanted to go outside, so I got some balls and let him out. But there was another dog and he started chasing him all around the yard.
Oh God.
And after a while he eventually stopped, but he still just ran away from the ball when I threw it. So I went over to my neighbor's house to play with his dogs. And they caught the frisbee in the air and even brought it back. They were like real Air Bud, and they just kept catching it like pro dogs. And it was pretty insane compared to my dog. And then I tried to compete with them, and they won. But I kept trying, and eventually I took that dub. So maybe I can be Air Bud too someday. So one day I decided to see how much a pawn shop would give me for my rubber band ball. So I got in my car and drove out to one, but it was closed for another 30 minutes. So I waited, ate a burrito, and then went back in and said, I got this rubber band ball.
Okay.
I want to sell for $200.
Why do you think it's worth $200?
I put a lot of time into it. It's a lot of rubber bands,
How many rubber bands are in there?
like 14 bags.
How many is in a bag?
I have no idea. But it weighs 6.5 pounds.
Wow, does it bounce? Wow, bounces pretty good. Well, how old are you?
16.
You gotta be 18 before you can do anything with it.
And then he said he'd give me $100 for it if I counted all the rubber bands and had someone 18 sell it for me. So I thought about it and said, 200.
No, I can't go 200 on it, but it'd be worth just watching you count that many rubber bands for $100.
500.
I couldn't get $500 out of a rubber ball.
How much do you think you could sell this for?
$50.
I'm gonna have to walk.
All right. Appreciate you coming in.
So then I walked out with my rubber band ball, and I guess I'm just gonna have to keep adding bands. So one day I was just scrolling through TikTok, and I kept seeing this apple bottle trend. So I drove to Walmart and went to the juice aisle to look for it. But there was none. So I left and went to a nearby Dollar Tree to look. And there was none there either. So I left and went to Target to look. And all they had were these big bottles that didn't crunch like an apple at all. And I bought the bottle I bit because germs. And then left, went home, and then went back to Walmart the next day to look again. And then to a neighborhood market that had them, or so I thought. I took them home, opened one up, and then bit into it. And it wouldn't crunch.
That doesn't sound like an apple.
I had got the glass bottles, but I drank it anyway, and it was pretty good, so I just kept drinking it. Part 3 of making a giant paper airplane. So I made this paper airplane and threw it off a bridge, but it failed. So I put it in the dumpster and made a new and improved version. And then took it to a new spot to test if it was better than the other one. And yeah, it was. And it even did a backflip. Swoosh. But the wings still didn't have enough support, so I added some cardboard and went to try again. I threw it off the hill and had my best flight yet. My brother also threw it, and then I flew it a few more times as well. And something about the plane just made it kept doing flips and stuff. I don't know why. I left, and then the next day it was less windy, so I came back with my old plane as well to test them both out. And they both did pretty bad, but then I threw it again, and they did alright. And my brother had some pretty good throws. Phew. And then I left. Go watch the full video on my YouTube, Dylan Ayres. So one day I wanted to put chalk dash lines all around my neighborhood like I saw this girl on TikTok do. So I went to Walmart and got some spray chalk and some regular chalk. Then went home and tried to make a stencil out of cardboard but failed. Then I tested out some spray chalk, and after that I measured the middle of the road and marked it. Then I tied some rope to a hoverboard to try to pull me, but it failed. Then I made it longer and it still failed. So I tried walking, but that sucked, and I thought it'd be easier with some normal chalk, but it still failed. So I got out a hoverboard I thought was broken, and it worked perfectly. And when I ran out of one piece, I got a new one and kept going all the way until the end of one side of my neighborhood. I ran out again, but kept going, and then was done. And then I went back home, got some more chalk, and went out to the other side of my neighborhood to get started. And I finished off the neighborhood and ran out of chalk. And then on the way home, my hoverboard died, so I had to carry it all the way home. And now here's driving before the lines, and here's driving after.